How do you take one of the wealthiest countries in the Western Hemisphere? You look at Venezuela, it's sitting on obviously huge oil. It has gemstones, it has mining. I mean, it is a rich country in resource. And you take that, it was very prosperous in the Western Hemisphere, and then it takes about 20, 25 years to destroy it completely.
Yeah, well, a vision board, for me, it's a visual representation of what I say is important. It's a visual representation, words, pictures, phrases that you put on a poster board or a canvas or whatever you want, that, really is just your reminder of what you said you wanted to accomplish this year.
She and her husband, every year, they save $1 a day. Oh. And they use that to sort of seed money their travel fund. But I thought, what if you just committed $1 a day, and then at the end of the year, you make a donation to a charitable organization? But I'm urging you to go one step further. Learn about it. Yes. Learn about the organization. Yeah. Learn about how it operates.
Welcome to the show and a Happy New Year. This is my friend Mandy.
And this is my friend Deb.
And together we are
Mandy and Deb.
We got the new year started perfectly. That was awesome.
Welcome to 2026, everybody. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in. By the way, make sure that you subscribe below. IITV, subscribe to all the shows. They're all great. And also join us on our Facebook page, Mandy.
Ampersand Deb.
Yes.
Because we're fancy.
We are so fancy.
Join us there.
We would love that. And we'd love to talk to you about our issues because, as you may know if you've been watching, we've got issues.
We've got big issues. Let me just say this. So I took 2 weeks off. We all had a little time off, right? And I came back. Holy macaroni. We're kicking off 2026 with a bang.
We are. There's a lot happening, a lot going on. Well, we can start with either the biggest news or the one that's, around wintertime, we all care about warmth and energy.
Okay, so let's start with Venezuela.
Okay, let's start with the big one.
The talk this entire week has been about Venezuela.
Yes.
And as I told Deb, guys, I have been following the Venezuelan socialist regime with great interest since 2005. And I've been telling people since 2005, we are going to get to see the failure of socialism in a real life, real time arc.
Yes.
So it's not that I'm happy about what's happening in Venezuela because people are suffering. 8 million people have left. A quarter of the population has left the country. And people are really in a state of uncertainty, and uncertainty is dangerous in situations like this. So we're not out of the dark. But this is how socialism always ends. It ends with corruption at the top. Mm-hmm. It ends with people who just want to enrich themselves, taking money from the people that they promised to take care of. But then they've got people in Venezuela eating zoo animals.
Yes.
They ate zoo animals. That's how bad the country is. So we have to see what comes next. I don't think any American is really, I'm not interested in nation building. I'm not interested in, having military boots on the ground. But if we can stop the tide of basically refugees out of Venezuela, it would go a long way towards really making everything better in Central South America and in the United States.
Yeah, and I've always found it interesting, too, because I visited places like East Germany and the Soviet Union, when it was the Soviet Union. And many people say, oh, well, those are extreme regimes. I mean, it happens everywhere. There's not one place that socialism has ever worked. And when you look at Venezuela, I haven't been studying as long as my friend Mandy here. But I look at it and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, how do you take one of the wealthiest countries in the Western Hemisphere? You look at Venezuela, it's sitting on obviously huge oil. It has gemstones. It has mining. I mean, it is a rich country in resource. And you take that, it was very prosperous in the Western Hemisphere, and then it takes about 20, 25 years to destroy it completely to where, as you were saying, people are having to eat zoo animals. People are suffering. It's horrible. And it's not because of anything other than the fact that when you have a dictator, and I think that's the key, because the big question when people are wondering what's going on, and I have to say, when I saw the headline that Maduro had been removed, I was like, holy cow, I feel like I'm watching some movie. But the reality is a couple of things that I hope people understand as we're talking about this. Maduro not only was a despot, a tyrannical leader, devastating to his people, he was not the duly elected president. There was fraud in the last election. And he was basically in league with narco-terrorism, including Hezbollah, Iran, China, Russia, and the head of a cartel. So let's just set the stage there of what actually happened.
Well, one thing you just said, you don't know how it happens in one generation. And let me tell you how it happened in Venezuela.
Yes.
So back when Venezuela was the third richest nation in the Western Hemisphere, the most wealthy nation in Latin America, they had an income inequality situation. It was not crazy. It was not the craziest thing, but they had grinding poverty that existed in Venezuela. So here comes Hugo Chavez. He's very dynamic. He's very able to get the message across. And he talks about income inequality, fixing income inequality, not letting these corporations loot our environment. He said all the right things to the people of Venezuela and was duly elected. There hasn't been a free or fair election in Venezuela since. Mm-hmm. The lie of democratic socialism is that you get to keep having free and fair elections. Nicolas Maduro, the current president who we just arrested, was not installed in a free and fair election. He was installed in a fixed election.
Yes.
That's how they've all gone. Well, then they did this. Hugo Chavez takes over. He nationalizes the oil company. He puts all of his cronies in charge. They start the process of running the oil operations into the ground. That takes about 20 years, which is where we are now. Then he promises everybody free school, free university, free healthcare. He promises everybody that they are going to feel the warm hug of collectivism.
It's so, yes, where the individual doesn't matter at all. You're just a collective.
The states and then they disarmed everyone.
Yeah, 100%. And that is the key, because when you look at the most violent countries in the Western Hemisphere, they're all ones where the only people that still have weapons are the police, the corrupt narco-terrorists, etc. And I think it's so interesting because we need to wake up here in America, because who just had an inauguration speech saying something very similar was Zoran Mamdani, who said it is time to get away from rugged individualism and instead, enjoy
feel the warm embrace of collectivism.
It's like, doesn't work very well. And you know what? Here's the thing. There is income inequality sometimes, but the problem is when you jump from a situation that can be solved by having freer markets, by having greater opportunity, and instead you're like, oh no, let's just put the government in charge and have them be the ones that control everything. It's the wrong solution for the problem, and we can't toy around with it. But I think the other thing I want to say real quickly, because we need to know the facts when we talk about this, this was not an act of war. This was something that the president does have the right to do under Article 2. And it started with the fact that Maduro was indicted for drug cartel charges, for other kind of charges. And the international community was against what he did last year, basically overriding an election. And so it was that action. I think people panic right away. Oh my gosh, we're at war. No, our military did an amazing job in 2.5 hours, helped the police action of the indictment, and he's back here going to face charges.
One thing people should know is that at the end of the Biden administration, they upped the bounty for Maduro's head to $25 million. So this is not someone that Donald Trump targeted. This is not someone that he said was just a bad guy. And I read the indictment. The indictment's only like 28 pages. I would strongly recommend, if you really want to see the level of crime and cocaine trafficking that was coming out of Venezuela. And Maduro and his wife were not just allowing it to happen. They were actively involved in drug trafficking at a massive, massive scale.
Yes.
So the arrest warrant was served, and now we're going to have to see what happens next. The vice president of the socialist government was left in charge. I think the Trump administration just didn't want to have a vacuum.
Yeah.
Because we've saw what happened in Libya, and we've seen what's happened in Iraq. You don't want to vacuum.
But I think there'll be a short leash. And one other thing that's going to be interesting this year, talk about starting off with a bang. Who's really scared by this? The people that relied on the Venezuelan oil that was being taken from the people, that was being used for a corrupt government, such as Cuba, that's been propped up for a long time, Iran, China. It's just going to be a really interesting time. So yes, first issue that we have, it's kind of been solved because Maduro's not there anymore.
No problem. This particular problem is solved. We'll see what happens next. Let's bring it closer to home.
Closer to home,
because we have a situation in Colorado that is on the verge of being dire. And I'm not one to engage in hyperbole. I generally try to keep, a very even keeled about stuff. But the energy policy that is being embraced and has been passed as law and rules and regulations here in Colorado is absurd.
Yeah.
And it is absurd at a level that it's going to end up costing ratepayers, the people of Colorado, our business community. If we dream of being a high-tech hub, it could very well shut this down. And I'm talking about the ridiculous goal of net zero by 2040. Net zero is saying all of our power is going to come from renewable sources, okay? Renewable sources are unreliable sources. The wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine. This is not new news. But the reality is that based on today's current technology, I used my assistant ChatGPT, and I said, Chat, what kind of battery supply using today's technology would we need to keep the Denver metro area powered for 48 hours in case that the wind wasn't blowing or the sun wasn't shining? It would take 68,000 container size generators that would take up 3 square miles of land to power the Denver metro for 2 days. This is completely absurd. And don't even get me started on the prices, Deborah.
Oh, I want to.
Please.
Yeah, I want to get her started on the prices.
I've got them on my phone because when you hear what renewable energy has done to the cost of energy in Europe, it is mind-blowing.
Well, and I have some of those because one of the things that we're going to start hearing here, if we're not careful, is the energy poor, which is a huge term in Europe. And when you look in Europe, I believe it has doubled the cost of heating. Here it is. Europe and UK, 80% higher electricity prices. Home heating, cooking is twice as much. And the other thing that happens, by the way, is it's unreliable. And many of us know that, obviously the Front Range, Excel was forced to have a power blackout for about, I think it was nearly 500,000 people. And the reason why was because the winds, they were concerned, were going to blow down their power lines. Now, why does that happen? Because some of them are already down. When you look at what's going on, the money gets diverted from reliable energy to put into a Green New Deal stuff. They're not even maintaining it. This is what happened in Maui. It's a little bit of what happened at the Marshall Fire because there was a down power line. They're not keeping it up. I experienced this when I had temporary insanity and I was in California. It started some of the things there. We are neglecting that which is actually reliable, causing a situation where, hey, get used to those blackouts, by the way, because if they truly get to this point of trying to get away from reliable energy, we're going to have that more and more. Just a small taste of it.
I want to give a few data points that are really easy to follow. This is the cost of electricity per kilowatt hour. Okay, so it's easy apples to apples comparison. These are all in US dollars. We start overall in the United States, we're at 16 cents roughly per kilowatt hour. Great price, right? Yeah. Colorado, we're even lower. Right now in Colorado, we're at almost 15 cents per kilowatt hour, which is very, very reasonable. Now, in the United States, 22.7% of our power comes from renewable energy. Mm-hmm. In Colorado, we're at 43%. Let's look at nations who have gone to a higher percentage. In Spain, at 56.8% renewable, their energy is 26 cents per kilowatt hour. In Germany, at 62%, almost 63% renewables, they're at 42 cents per kilowatt hour, which is essentially your power bill would triple if we continue down this path. It is not feasible. And yet we have a governor who has appointed his friends or cronies or whoever most out of the green energy industry to the Public Utilities Commission, which is a commission that decides whether or not to approve these things. It is so incestuous. And I'm just going to say it. I think all of these people are rich. I don't think they have to worry about paying their power bill. No. And I think that they just think we'll come up with more programs for the poor, and the middle class are the ones that are going to be so squeezed. You're not going to qualify for assistance, but you're still going to have to pay the massive power bills. I mean, this is a mess that is so visible down the pipeline. It's not even, no pipelines.
It is. And when you think about people who are either poor or on fixed incomes, in Europe, you hear the story of the elderly who cannot afford to heat their homes. Then they jerry-rig something in their homes. There's people that are dying of these other energy sources in their own homes to keep it going. This is not the direction to go. And I got to say, let's just be honest. If today renewables was able to do this and not make people incredibly broke, I'd be all for it. Yes. I've got no dog in this hunt, so to speak, other than letting people flourish. And we're going backwards to the point, by the way, that Bill Gates even had recently said towards the end of last year, he totally switched. And he said, we need to move away from the apocalyptic catastrophizing that pushes this manic pace that the innovation isn't keeping up with, and start looking at what leads to human flourishing. So I think it's going to be a big thing. We need to be aware of it, and we need to connect the dots. And by the way, we need to get rid of the monopolies also. It's one of the only things where you can't shop around. You get one company and that's it. So
I could go on for days about this. And as a matter of fact, IITV has a show about this called Power Gab. You should absolutely watch it if you are at all concerned about what's happening, and they do an incredible job.
Yes, they do.
Teaching you about this stuff. It's honestly how I learned most of what I know.
Yeah, there you go. So we're going to be wearing a lot of sweaters like this to stay warm. Okay. Going to come to one more issue that we're going to talk about before we get to our guest, and that is protecting children's health. Obviously, if you've ever been a mom or a dad, this is a huge thing you think about. And there's some really positive things that are changing. And we'll just start with a couple of different areas where children's health is finally being prioritized. One that's impacted right here, all of them are going to impact Colorado. But something that's interesting is there was a HHS ruling that in order now to receive Medicare or Medicaid to hospitals, they can no longer perform irreversible transitioning of minors. That means like hormone therapy that can cause sterilization, stuff like that. Because of that, Children's Hospital and Denver Health have stopped doing that. You know, wherever you come on the transgender issue, it is completely different. You're an adult. But it's time for us to slow it down because, by the way, Europe is far ahead of us on this. Many of those countries who led the way on these irreversible treatments for children have already stopped them. And I think it's a good thing that this is now happening in Colorado.
I'm just going to say, when you are an adult, I support you I don't necessarily support your choices because some of them may be really bad, but I support your right to make the choices that you feel good about. But unless you believe that we should eliminate any rules that prevent children from doing things like getting a face tattoo. If you believe kids shouldn't be able to get a face tattoo, then why in the world would we let them make decisions for their bodies that A, they can't fully understand, and B, are irreversible? And the stories that I read, and you know how when you watch a story or you watch a video, then you're in the algorithm. I got in the detransitioner algorithm for about a month. And these stories are so incredibly heartbreaking. And there are people who say, look, I was a broken and confused kid, and I was immediately given puberty blockers, and I was immediately told this is what I needed to do or I was going to kill myself. And it was the worst thing for me. And it's heartbreaking because, you know, some of them have been able to regain some normal hormonal function and have children. There are some positive stories, but a lot of them can't and never will. And we cannot let little children make those decisions. And in all honesty, from where I sit and what I see, a vast majority of the time, I feel like it is the parents driving this.
It is.
It is one of the parents driving this. And it's not all the time, but it does seem to be part of the problem.
It's the parents, and sometimes the parents are almost emotionally blackmailed into this. And it may be by doctors who don't have the correct information, but they're often told, you know what, would you rather have a live daughter or a dead son, or whichever way it's going, when the truth is coming out that the suicide rates are much higher afterwards. So it's time for us all to wake up. I think this is a positive step towards protecting children, and there's ballot initiatives right here in Colorado that you can get involved in that addresses this. But let's talk about another one, which is...
This is a big one.
Big one.
So...
huge.
They have changed the CDC under RFK Jr., has changed the vaccine recommendations for children. And they have removed some of the vaccines off of the schedule. Most of them are vaccinations for seasonal illnesses or meningitis. Right, which that vaccine, when received later, is perfectly fine. Like, I got it before I went to college. And let me just say this before we go any further. I am not anti-vaccine. I am vaccinated. My kids are vaccinated. But when I had my daughter, I was one of those people that went to the doctor and said, I have concerns. And the first practice that I went to, not the first practice in Fort Myers, but we moved to Louisville when she was 11 months old. And I was looking for a new pediatrician. And I go into this pediatrician's office and I said, hey, I have some concerns and I'd like to have a conversation. She goes, oh, hang on. She turns around, gets a piece of paper out of a drawer and hands it to me and goes, this is our practice's vaccine policy. I'll let you read it over, and leaves the room. And this piece of paper literally says, we vaccinate, we don't deal with patients who are not vaccinated, and we don't want to talk about it.
Oh my God.
So I scooped up my baby and I left not because of, I don't care what but because they didn't want to talk to me, right? They didn't even want to have a conversation. I eventually found a pediatrician. I talked about my concerns. We spaced the vaccines out.
Yeah.
No big deal.
We did the same thing. And what's interesting about it is we're not anti-vax either. Our kids were vaccinated for the ones that made sense, obviously. But when we look at what's happened, when we weren't asked about this, since 1986, the amount of vaccines that had been recommended for babies since 1986, now 40 years, am I doing my math? It's, I need more coffee. In 40 years, it has gone up 500%, the amount of vaccines that we've given to children. And you know what they did? They looked around the HHS and they said, how do other countries do this?
Right.
Do they have this many? And they found out that no, we just got pushed way beyond the norm elsewhere. So they went down from 14 recommended to 8. I think it's a positive step. You can space them out. And I think overall it's really good. And they keep the normal ones that make sense. Mumps, measles, polio. Thank goodness these innovations have ended horrible children's illnesses. But another place that we started to look was this final thing on health, which is looking at what is in our food. There was a recent ruling by the HHS new health food guidelines, and we've talked about this before. In America, we have over 10,000 additives in our food. In Europe, 338.
Obviously, we're special here in the United States of America.
We need to preserve things more.
I know that RFK Jr.'s, appointment was controversial for a lot of reasons. But I see nothing wrong with what he's doing. Now, the American Pediatric Association has already come out and said, we're going to keep recommending all the other vaccines. And that is their right. This is one of the reasons that I sometimes get a little prickly about the medical establishment because they are so pharmacologically based.
Yes.
That sometimes I think that drives decision-making a little too far.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is important is that if you want to get all of the vaccinations for your kids, you still can. No one is going to tell you no. That is entirely a decision that should be made up by you and your family.
Yeah, 100%. And I do agree. I think what's interesting is when I was reading some articles about this, the pharmaceutical companies were screaming because they were not consulted.
Oh.
And they don't need to be consulted because it's the doctors and the specialists who should say this is all that is really needed, not those who are motivated. Many good people in the pharmaceutical business, but honestly, there's a profit margin there. And then when it comes to the food additives, I'm so grateful that they basically just said, let's get back to real food.
Well, you know what? I think it's time for us to bring on our next guest because she was actually coming on about another cool thing that we're going to talk about too. But then I think this dropped like today or yesterday, the brand new food pyramid. Now, to be clear, it's an inverted pyramid.
It is.
From HHS. This is the first time that I remember seeing real food on the food pyramid in my lifetime.
And by the way, I have to do the transition because I like clicking.
Yes,
so we're going to say now that we've got stuff.
Joining us to talk about two things. The new HHS food pyramid, which had zero lobbyist involvement, I can tell just by looking at it.
Yay.
And also vision boarding for 2026. Our first return guest, Michelle Zellner, the founder of Better Beings. You can find her at betterbeings.net. She's my fitness and health guru and has just changed my whole worldview, and I'm so grateful. But let's talk about this food pyramid.
Let's do that. I am so excited. Thank you for having me back on today. And it did just drop today, and I texted you right away. Can we please talk about this? I mean, I don't usually get super excited about guidelines, government guidelines coming out, but this is something I've been preaching for 25 years. Like, oh, finally, like we're going to make this a mainstream message, right? Eat real food. Like, oh, what a concept.
So let's talk about what the pyramid actually looks like, because it is an inverted triangle. What do you got at the top?
Protein coming from real food. Again, something that a lot of us have been harping on for decades. And finally, we're making that the mainstream message. And I think so many things people don't understand is these recommended guidelines that have been in place, yes, very, very heavily influenced by food lobbies. Also, they are based on an idea to not die, right? To not starve. They're not based on an idea for optimal well-being.
Right.
And they are also minimum targets. But somebody sees a number and they think like, well, that's all I need to be the best human being on the planet. And that's just not the case.
Yeah.
So I love that they're actually doubling the minimum recommended allowance for protein intake, doubling it from where it is. Huge.
One of the things, Michelle, that I thought was interesting, because I was reading this, and I think we all know that there is a health epidemic, and particularly for kids. I read a statistic that said 40% of children today have some kind of chronic illness. And when you think about the crud that we give them, why don't we just start real quickly on this topic? Just define real foods. I think we all know what it is, but and if you can't pronounce something, you probably shouldn't put it in your body. You know?
I've used that rule for years. That's how I'm a label reader, and I flip it over, and I'm like, I don't know what hydroxybutyric is, so I'm not going to buy that.
So if you could just define for people who are watching what real food is. And I think there's also a move away from, oh my gosh, fats are bad, animal protein is bad. Can you talk about those two things?
Yeah, so real food, I mean, in theory, you can find it outside. It grows on a tree, grows in the ground, roams in the pasture, swims in the water, comes from something that does that. Some of those things are going to require a degree of processing. So this is where people get all in the weeds, like, oh, it's processed. Well, yes, in order to turn cheese into cheese, you have to do some things to it. That's processing. But I can pretty much determine how cheese becomes cheese, right? It's not that hard. So really what we're going to focus on is mostly real food, a lot less of what I've been calling for years, food-like substances, which I actually heard RFK say that. I'm like, oh, is he here? Is he listening to me? What's happening?
I think so.
I love it.
I think there was a footnote in his letter.
Yeah, right? Getting away from this healthy food and junk food narrative, and instead it's real food, and then there are food-like substances, and minimize or eliminate the food-like substances to the best of your ability. Those are the ultra-processed foods. As far as healthy fats, I mean, I've always said if I can determine where it comes from, it offers health benefits. So fat from whole food sources, fat from animals, fat from plants, they're whole food sources, versus things that take a lot of effort and engineering to create what it is. And then definitely not the lab created fats, right? The hydrogenated oils that we see in the very cheap foods.
I was grabbing a bottle of canola oil when I went, what is a canola?
There you go.
Do you know what it is?
No.
I have no idea. And I was in the grocery store and my phone wouldn't work, so I couldn't look it up. I was like, well, I don't even know what this is.
That's funny.
So I'm an avocado olive girl myself, and it works fine for me. Yeah. So, Michelle, let me shift gears for a moment, because you have, and if you're watching this show the first day it comes out on Friday, you can still be a part of this super, super cool event. But we actually brought you on to talk about vision boarding. And vision boarding is a concept that I think more and more people are becoming aware of. And you do this incredible event that's not just about a vision board, and we're going to talk about what that is in a second, but really about focusing on the upcoming year. And it's, in a way, it's a group project, but it's also highly individual. And if someone is sort of, looking at January and going, oh, I'm not sure what I want out of 2026, how does a vision board help? First of all, what is it? I guess we should tell.
Yeah, well, a vision board, for me, it's a visual representation of what I say is important. It's a visual representation, words, pictures, phrases that you put on a poster board or a canvas or whatever you want, that, really is just your reminder of what you said you wanted to accomplish this year. And so I've been doing this for over 10 years. I used to roll my eyes at it, trust me, like, oh, I'm going to put a bunch of things on a board and my life will be amazing. That is not the way it works. So my workshop is really, it is a step-by-step process to help people figure out, number one, what is important to you. And now let's represent that in some way, but we can't stop there. We have to now determine, well, how are you going to accomplish it? How are you going to get from saying to doing, from vision to fruition? And so my workshop really takes somebody through all of those steps. And I'm doing it differently this year. I often have outside speakers. It is me, myself, and I as the host this year. But it's going to be a lot more intense workshop style. And I think, people who've been before, I think they'll really like it. And if you've never been, I think you'll really like it.
It's great for making you think about this stuff. And I was telling Deborah, in all honesty, Michelle, like after doing vision boards now for 10 years, I found vision boards are not for me. But a word, a phrase. That is where my jam is. For me, vision boards felt very overwhelming. And I think it was Damon that just said, oh, you can be reminded of all your failures at the end of the year. But
they're staring at you.
But the same level of intention is going into this, right?
Yeah.
And so the process of going through thinking about what would be on my vision board and then narrowing that down into my phrase for the year has been incredibly helpful for me. I mean, incredibly helpful. And this year, my word is present. I'm working on being more present wherever I am, whatever I'm doing. I'm trying to stop the world from whipping by so fast, and I want to make sure that I am in the moment, whatever the moment is.
Yeah.
And I pair the vision board with a word. So I've been doing a word or a phrase of the year for 11 years as well. And I can go through all of mine for the past 11 years and know exactly why I picked that phrase, what it meant, and how it led me. But it is a way to rein things in. And so when I pair my word with my vision board, it's kind of that double check. And I find that to be really powerful as well.
So let's say someone doesn't even know where you start. Like I remember doing one many, many years ago, so it's time to try it again. And I was like cutting things out of magazines and images and all that. Do you do it online? Do you actually get your fingers on something? What is that process, and what would people need to bring to this process?
Yeah, so this year, my new pivot is my word. And so I'm pivoting in this direction with the Vision Board Workshop. And it's really my reflect and reset workshop that I teach. So we're going to start with reflection. We're going to reflect on 2025, reflect on all the positives, reflect on some of the challenges. What did you learn? What did you gain? And then we're going to reset. So now we've evaluated where we came from. Now, where do you want to go? So the reset is fast forward to December 31st, 2026. When you're sitting in reflection, what do you want to be reflecting on? What experiences do you want to have had? What memories do you want to be revisiting? Maybe what achievements do you want to have accomplished? And I think it really starts by making that list to get you some clarity. And then once you have that clarity, then we can go to the tangible things. We can find things in magazines. We can search, for phrases or pictures on the internet, to have those tangible things. I know there's a lot of virtual vision boards, which I get it, super easy. There is nothing like the tangible.
Yeah, I mean, even though I just said, vision boards don't really work for me, I love the cutting out. I love laying it out. I love getting my little glue stick and and you make your little collage and it makes it something pretty. I just don't think the digital medium does the same things for our brain as the tactile, actual, function of doing it. I don't feel like it would be the same thing.
Well, and I think it's the process. I mean, what I like is it's not something you can just do quickly, because if you're having to process it, then you're asking those questions along the way. And what I like about this is because, we often talk about New Year's resolutions and, I don't know, it's like down to 25% of people actually keep those, because there's not enough, it seems like, process of it to figure out what didn't you like, the review, the reflection, and then what you want going forward. If you were to say to people who are watching right now, a couple of questions, let's say even to prepare for this process, if they're able to join you on Saturday or they just want to do it on their own, what would they need to begin to ask themselves?
Yeah, I think first ask yourself the question, maybe give yourself a scale of 1 to 10. How satisfied are you with your life? 1, not very, 10.
Wow, we just go right for it there.
There you go. Okay.
So, what'd you put?
That's when people start crying. No, I'm just kidding. There has been crying in vision board events in the past, though.
That is true. That is true. But we have to get honest with ourselves, right? Because nothing changes if nothing changes. So you have to know, where are you? And now, okay, well, what are you willing and able to do about that? So maybe we'll pick the areas. It's my physical health. It's my financial health. It's my relationships. It's my career. It's just my, the fun things that I do, the experiences. And then we can start to separate, what areas. Maybe we have different scores. Maybe I'm a 10 in this area, but I'm a 2 in this area. Okay, well, what can we do to get you from a 2 to a 4? And then we really start there. So I think it comes down to, how satisfied a life do you want to live? How full and fulfilling a life do you want to live? Because you're in charge of that. And so asking yourself these questions, and it always goes back to the why. What is your personally meaningful reason? Why does this matter to you? And then we have to work through the obstacles, because you're going to face obstacles. So then we have to create strategies around the obstacles. And that's what this whole workshop is about. It is not just cut and paste and walk away. It is really a systematic approach. I'm a process person, because I mean,
I'm laughing because I know you, and I'm like, oh, that's like the truest words ever spoken, that this girl has a system for everything.
Well, the true growth and actually the joy is in the process. I know we're a very outcome-oriented, destination-oriented species, but the actual benefit all comes through the process.
Yeah. Well, and we don't normally take that time. I mean, I think it's great. And I've often thought, how do you make something stick? And I love the fact that you said the why, the big why. It can't be, oh, I just want to lose some weight. Well, that's not big enough. You know, it's like, oh, I want to be healthy so I can keep doing these things, or, you know, or be around for kids or whatever it is. So I think that's really key.
Now, are you going to have this on your website at betterbeings.net after the fact, if people are either watching this too late or they couldn't do the Saturday?
Yeah, they can always reach out to me via my website, and I can figure out, I'm going to be recording it so I can figure out a way to help and get it to them.
Excellent.
Great.
My daughter is 16 years old, and she did her vision board. She had friends over. Actually, I'm going to tell you, I'll talk about that in the good news section.
Okay, let's do that.
I have like the cheesiest good news section for It's Good News today. So there you go. Michelle,
I love
go
that,
ahead.
Mandy. And one quick thing. So I did a vision board workshop for a group of pioneers, sort of like Girl Scouts, right? About 4 years ago. The leader's mom, the mom, just texted me yesterday or 2 days ago of 4 of these gals, now 4 years later, in her basement, all working on their vision board. And she says, the vision lives on. So, you know, there is no age where it's too young to start doing this.
I love it.
I love that too.
Thank you, Michelle. I may be peeking in on Saturday, or at least following up. So that's awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Happy New Year. I'll see you soon.
Happy New Year.
Okay.
Okay. Now we've got good news.
Okay.
Are we ready?
We have good news.
Good news. That's what we have. So
Kick it up. Tell us.
I
Transition
told Deborah,
right on
I was like,
into it.
oh my God, I forgot to get a good news story. I forgot to look. But can I just have a moment? I just want to have a sappy mom moment for a second. So I have a 16-year-old daughter. So much of her early teen years were destroyed by COVID. And these kids were robbed of so much during COVID in terms of being able to socialize and all of that stuff. And it's so hard for them. So some of you may have gotten it right back. But New Year's Eve, my daughter had friends over. She had, you know, not a ton of kids, but just great kids. They all came over, and Chuck and I are sitting upstairs and we're watching television, and I'm just hearing the screaming laughter coming from the basement. And I was like, oh, thank you. And I was overwhelmed with gratitude for that moment. And you just have to think about how much damage we did to these kids. And I think that they're working so hard to try and move past it and get back to that normal kid experience. And just, it's amazing how paying attention to laughter in your basement can bring you so much joy. So
I love that.
Just think about it. Just listen, pay attention, because you have to appreciate those moments when they happen. So that's
so
my
good.
little shmushy good news today.
Mine feels very impersonal now, because I don't know the person I'm going to mention, but it's funny how it actually ties in with our topics, because we've talked about, you know, the vision board. What do you want to do? What's holding you back? We've talked about being healthy. We've talked about all of that. So I love this story for a New Year's story, because it really kind of puts me to shame. And this one is about a woman named Betty Kellenberger, who I don't know personally. I have not heard her laughter, but I'm sure it's wonderful.
Infectious, I've heard.
Yeah, exactly. But Betty is an 80-year-old retired teacher. And what I love about this is because when you look at any excuses or obstacles that we may have for whatever it is, let's say your New Year's resolution or your vision is either to be healthy, or you think about people on their deathbed, they think, oh, I always wanted to do that and I didn't do it. Well, good for Betty, because she was 80 and she decided she was going to wait till she was 90 to do this, which is she is the oldest woman to hike the Appalachian Trail. Now, being from Colorado, I was a little biased. I thought the Rocky Mountains. I did a 13er with our son. The Appalachian Trail, by the way, runs through 14 states from Maine to Georgia, 2,200 miles long, filled with amazing, rigorous rock climbs. It's equivalent to hiking Mount Everest 16 times, which is crazy. And 75% of all hikers fail doing it. Now, Betty didn't just do it. She overcame numerous times. And by the way, her question was, if I'm not going to do it now, I'm going to wait till I'm 90. So she's 80. She made her first attempt in 2022. This is perseverance. In 2022, her hiking partner, a friend, had a rough fall, and they didn't complete it because she also had dehydration, Lyme disease, and a concussion. That was 2022.
I mean, as one does when you do the Appalachian Trail,
right?
all those things.
Because I'm like, hey, let's just go do the Appalachian
This is actually
Trail.
on my bucket list, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Yes, for my
Okay.
retirement. I
Okay, good
I
thing.
might not
I know
do a
you're
straight
working
through.
out.
I may not do a straight through, maybe in sections, but that's on my list.
Yeah, exactly. Then she tried again in 2023. She had a bad fall again at 80 years old. No, well, she would have been 78 then. She had a bad fall, so she had to stop. But she also found that her hiking partner died that year. So she was determined she was going to do it for both of them. She tried again in 2024. Hurricane Helen came along and made it impassable. But this woman is, I mean, at some point in time, I'm like, oh, I tried. But there was a concussion, there was, an ailment and a hurricane. I'm not going to do it.
Is God sending me a message? Like, is God telling me not to do this?
But you know what she said God was doing? She said her version of it was, I think God really likes rocks because he made a lot of them. That's one of the things that she said. But she didn't give up, not even a hurricane. Finally, in 2025, this past year, she was like, I'm going to do it no matter what. She got to a point where it was incredibly difficult, and she thought, I don't think I can finish this. And she tells this story, and I hike a lot by myself. My husband always knows where I am, but she was hiking by herself, and she said a man came along at exactly the right moment and encouraged her and basically said, you can do this, and you'll regret it your whole life. At 80, I don't know how long that is. But
I mean, she's not buying any green bananas.
The final 20 years,
Exactly.
15. But anyway, he came along at exactly the right time. And she said that hikers, and these are serious hikers, often call these people trail angels. People who mysteriously show up at just the right moment, like with food or water or directions or encouragement. So she said that he encouraged her. She completed the trail finally at the age of 80, and she's the oldest woman to do it. Now, what I think is even more interesting is when we think about this new year, vision boards, what's that thing you would always regret if you never tried it? And she said, I've had a series of unfortunate events. That's what she calls a hurricane, Lyme disease, death, falls. And she goes, each one I got a better story. And so then this year I was able to do it. And here's her advice, Betty's advice. Get out, move, set a goal and work toward it. The bigger the goal, the greater the reward. And don't let anyone tell you you can't.
There you go. Now I have a new, I'm adding to my bucket list right now, beat Betty. Okay, so when I'm 81, when I'm 81, Betty, you're going down when I'm 81.
I'll go with you. That will be when we take the show on the road.
Yeah, the only part of the Appalachian Trail that really scares me is the part where they have all these massive signs that are like, there are literally billions of ticks in the next half mile. And that freaks me out. She didn't even share
the ticks. She talked about the hurricane.
Well, that's how she got the Lyme disease.
Oh, that's probably
That's exactly how she got the Lyme disease.
So those are our good news stories. Go for it. Listen to Betty. Do it. Listen to the laughter. Okay, do you have a random act of kindness?
I want you to go first today.
Okay, I will go first. So I was thinking about, January, you get all that Christmas stuff, you clear out a lot of stuff, and, typically we just drop it off at a normal donation place. And Goodwill's great, ARC stores are great. I'm not saying that, but I thought about, I was reading this story and I thought, I want to be intentional this time and take it somewhere where I can actually know the people who are receiving it and getting gain from it. I mean, Our son likes thrifting. We like thrifting. We type this. So I do appreciate everyone who gives something to Goodwill. Thank you, because I might end up buying it, including this sweater. But I was reading a story about someone who gathered all their things and they donated to a women's shelter. And most of the women's shelters have single moms, they have kids there a lot of times, and women, and they actually got to take it in and give it to a woman in need. They didn't necessarily interact, but they saw the facility.
Right.
And I thought, instead of just donating it and then buying it, just once every so often, just take it directly somewhere. It could be a recovery facility like Step Denver. It could be a pregnancy resource center where women are facing a crisis pregnancy and they need diapers or they need household goods. But that's what I think would be great. Find a place like that where you have a more direct connection with the people that you're serving.
I would even say go one step further, and I know this sounds very overwhelming, but find a nonprofit this year, and that's actually really funny that was yours, because mine is going to be like, we're in the beginning of the year right now. Find a nonprofit that touches your heart, that you feel some real connection to. It could be an animal organization. It could be an organization for people with developmental disabilities. It could be anything. But find something that touches your heart and figure out a way. My personal trainer, Dana, and I were talking about this today. She and her husband, every year, they save $1 a day. And they use that to sort of seed money their travel fund. But I thought, what if you just committed $1 a day, and then at the end of the year, you make a donation to a charitable organization? But I'm urging you to go one step further. Learn about it. Learn
Yes.
about the organization. Learn about how it operates. Talk to the executive director. Do a tour if it's a facility. Like, get involved at a more personal level, whatever that looks like for you. It will be the most gratifying thing that you will ever experience. I have had a connection with Step Denver for many years. It's a wonderful organization here that helps men, mostly homeless, overcome addiction. They're phenomenal. But I love that relationship. I love sharing their story with other people. And I think that would be a great thing to just sort of do this year to get you outside of yourself and do something nice for somebody else.
I love that because we have a connection with Wellspring, which helps young adults with IEDs, intellectual or developmental difficulties, and they can be teenagers and up from there. But we got involved and we went and did a tour, and what was so amazing was these young people. Well, actually, some of them are older. A lot of them it's because their parents are still caring for them, and they're 40, 50, 60 even.
Right.
But the words we heard over and over again were friend. Everybody was my friend, and it was I was their friend within like 2 minutes of being there. And it was so contagious. And we've stayed involved. We went bowling with them. It was a fundraiser bowling. But I love that because too often we miss that human connection, that spiritual interaction of one person blessing another. And I know you find this always we're the more blessed from the interaction. So
when you get to meet someone who is benefiting from an organization that you work with and they say things to you like, I'd be dead if I weren't here, or friend, or whatever it is. It is genuinely, it's almost like when you see your kid do something great.
Yeah.
It's almost that good.
Or laugh in the basement.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I love that.
We'll leave it on that.
Well, thanks for tuning in. Happy New Year. We hope that this is a year that is healthy, like we were talking about at the beginning, where we stand up for the things we believe in, where we pursue with intentionality, and that you keep watching and subscribe down there.
So we love you.
Yes. Take care.
Happy New Year.